The Port of Oakland and the cranes contained therein are symbolic not only of globalization in general, but also of the growing interdependence of the United States and the People's Republic of China. The Oakland port is the fifth largest port in the United States. It has 8 terminals. There are usually about 2 to 3 ships at each terminal in a week, which gives about 20 to 30 ships at the Oakland port at once. The turnaround time for a ship is about 8 to 16 hours, depending on how many crates are being loaded and offloaded at the ship. This slideshow is going to focus not only on the engineering marvel of the crane, but also of the inherent symbolism in it.
The two pictures that you're going to see and you see now are the picture of the crane going under the Golden Gate Bridge and the Bay Bridge as the two newest cranes were being brought to Oakland. The Port of Oakland and the state of California purchased these cranes from the Shenhua Port Machinery Corporation, and it was the last 2 cranes out of a deal that they reached in 1999 for the purchase of 12 cranes for the port. This corporation, the ZPMC, builds heavy machinery for port operations around the world, especially rubber-tired gantry cranes, which are used to move the crates onto trucks after they've been offloaded by the cranes, and they build the actual cranes themselves. The cranes cost about $5.5 million each, and the trip from China, which took about 3 weeks by ship, cost $1.5 million. They began construction in early 2003, finished in early 2005, and were loaded onto the Panamax ship, reached here in March of 2005, and were offloaded onto the Port of Oakland. This picture and the next picture are both views from the top of the largest crane at the Port of Oakland at 24 stories. It's currently the largest crane in operation in the world. This view really gives you a good idea of how large the port is. You can see about half of the port's 8 terminals, and it also shows you how important foreign trade is with the United States. All of the red containers you see splayed out over miles and miles of port is from a Japanese shipping line, and the blue crates are from a Chinese shipping line. 95% of all of the trade that's done out of the port is with Asia, and that number was slightly higher before the economic downturn when we were doing 60% importing, 40% exporting, but because of the diminished buying power in the United States right now, it's about 50% importing and 50% exporting. 45% of all the imports that are coming into the Port of Oakland come from China, and they're namely machinery and consumer goods, things that are made in factories in China. And 18% of all the exports that are coming out of the United States are going to China, and they're namely agriculture and raw materials. This is a photo of the Schnitzer Steel junkyard. A lot of the cars that are broken down on the West Coast are sent to this junkyard to be turned into scrap metal, and all of the scrap metal here is loaded into crates and put onto ships to China, where it'll be broken down further and used as raw materials in their factories. And it's a really good example of how the United States is getting consumer products from abroad, using them up, breaking them down, and sending them to China to be recycled.
This is a picture of a spreader. It is the machinery that the cranes use to lock onto containers. A skilled crane operator can move about 35 containers an hour. The spreader comes down from the bottom of the crane and locks onto the top of the container. It is called the spreader because it can open up to fit 20-foot containers and 40-foot containers. Here we see that everything written in English is also written in Chinese. China is really visible in the Port of Oakland. The cranes were built in China. Then the cranes are used to import products that were made in China and then send back Chinese products that are to be made into new products in China. Although the port is a major employer in Oakland, it contributes immensely to our reliance on China. The crane will most likely end up where it started, in a heap of scrap metal in China, once we are finished using it. About 20 or 30 years later, it'll be sent back using a newer crane.